In the last 4 years, I've purchased 30 homes with no money down using Ron LeGrand's system.
I believe you can use Ron's course in your spare time. We actually started out doing this part-time. Josh has since then quit his job and now does this full-time, and I do it pretty much full-time, still work a little bit.
Absolutely. You can, if you just do this a few hours a week, you can make more doing this part-time than you can work a full job 60 hours a week. And it's amazing when you do your first deal. Our first deal, we made $24,000, and that was about half of what I was making in a yearly salary before.
One of the best things about this business is you could do it anywhere in the country. Like we live in North Carolina, and our goal is we'd like to live in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, where it's beautiful. And you can take this and buy properties anywhere that you go.
Welcome, and thank you for joining me in the wonderful world of real estate. Before I get started into the actual meat, I think I probably should begin with my story and how I got started and what qualifies me to stand here before you today and talk to you folks that are listening to these tapes. I started back in the early 80s. I went to a seminar. I saw a seminar advertised in the newspaper, and at that time I was just working for a living. I worked most of my life operating and working in service stations. I was a mechanic, and I was pretty darn good at what I done. And the 3 years prior to getting involved in real estate business, I actually worked for a large carnival out of Orlando, Florida. This carnival traveled up and down the East Coast, and we played all of the big fairs, the big state fairs and so forth, and I operated 3 skee ball trailers where you roll the ball up the alley, great big hydraulic units that rolled out, and the awning rolled up and the alleys rolled down and ready for you to stick your quarters in. I did that for about 3 years on the road. I lived in a tractor trailer unit, 40 feet long. That was my home. I was on the road about 8 months out of the year. And during that time, I had an opportunity, because I had a lot of time on my hands, to read some books, and I started reading some real estate books. And I got interested in real estate because I had no prior experience in real estate whatsoever prior to that time. I knew nothing about it at all. I was as green gets. I came off the road in February of 1982, and I saw this ad in the paper. I was broke. I was bankrupt. I had zero net worth. I had more outgo than income. My income wasn't all that great. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I was just making a living like a lot of you folks sitting in a room, a lot of you folks listening to these tapes, and I had no direction. I knew that I wanted more than what I had because it just wasn't what I wanted. I was getting nowhere except surviving. Year after year was going by, and nothing really of any importance was happening in my life, financially anyway. So I was hungry, but I really didn't know what I was hungry for. I saw this ad in the paper, and I decided that if I'm ever going to do anything different and change the situation that I'm in now, sooner or later I've got to make a move. I was working Monday through Saturday, sometimes Monday through Sunday. I'd get up, I'd go to work, I'd get off, I'd get up, I'd go to work, I'd get off, I'd get up, I'd go to work, and I survived simply for what little time I had to myself and my family, and it just got old quickly. So it was a difficult decision for me to go to that seminar because it cost $450 that I didn't have. I had to borrow the money to go, and believe me, it was a big burden at that time, and it took me about 2 days to make up my mind whether I wanted to go risk that this $450 would pay off. I did, and the rest is history. I sat in that class for 2 days, and I listened to the instructor talk about all the ways to make money in real estate. I realized that all of that stuff can't be lies. Some of it has got to be real. I think I can do it, and I went out from there with 1 or 2 techniques that I picked up, because that's all I got. 2 days sitting in that class, when I came out of there, I was really screwed up. I knew very little of what he was talking about. I did pick up some things that really struck home for me, and I started using those immediately, and sure enough, it wasn't long before I had my first success, and then my second, and it wasn't but about 6 weeks after I attended that seminar that I called my boss and told him that I'm going to up my income to up his. I've been working real estate ever since full-time. I started out with a partner back in the early 80s because I thought you had to have money and credit to do this business. I really didn't pick up in that class that you need neither. But folks, I'm here to tell you that it does not take money to do this business. In fact, if you've got money and you're throwing it at this business, I suggest that you step back and reanalyze the way you're doing business. This is one business, thank goodness, that does not require your money. And I will prove that to you by the end of this seminar or by the end of this cassette series. This business does not require credit. If you're using your credit to do this business, in my opinion, you're doing it wrong. If you're using your credit, you're setting yourself up for a downfall needlessly, because the things that I'm going to teach on these cassettes and in this class do not require credit. It took me a little while to figure that out. The first 6 months I went out and I did about 20 deals in the first 6 months because I was a charger. I was hungry. I'd go out and find them, and I'd bring them to my partner, and he'd put up the money, and we'd go out and refinance them, usually with FHA loans, and then we'd sell off the properties and let the buyers assume and take back second mortgages, and we had ourselves a little cookie cutter approach going, and it was working rather well for us. I remember the first time I went to a closing, and I actually brought home a check for $3,000 the day I bought the house. I couldn't believe it. I absolutely couldn't believe it. I took that check home, and I looked at that check, and I said, must be something wrong here. There's no way you can make $3,000 that easy. I had to work weeks. I mean weeks to make $3,000. There's no way it could be that easy. It'll never happen again. And it wasn't but a couple, 3 weeks later till I brought home a bigger check. And when that happened, I knew that this was real. There was no turning back for me. And I got so excited I just couldn't sleep at night. When I get out of bed in the morning, real estate was on my mind. When I go to bed, it was on my mind. If you didn't want to talk real estate, stay the heck away from me. It was the most exciting thing that I had ever experienced in my life, and to this very day, it still excites me. It is a business that will absolutely take control of your emotions because the opportunity is endless. Just about the time you think you've got it figured out, you'll learn some new techniques that will open up some whole brand new doors for you. Well, I went out and I started working real estate. And about 6 months into that partnership, I decided that I really didn't need that partner anymore. I learned how to make money in the business, and it got so the partner really wasn't providing anything that I needed. So we disbanded that partnership, and to this day we're still partners on a couple of things. But since that time, almost 13 years, actually over 13 years ago now, I have been on my own, buying and selling real estate, creating cash from single-family houses. I started out, however, building an empire. In my early days, I thought that the way to get rich was to go out and acquire all of the real estate that you could and just get all the net worth in your financial statement possible, and I thought that that would just automatically make you a millionaire. And in fact, it would if you survive. I quickly learned, after acquiring 276 units within my first 2 years in business, 276 units, now that's some multifamily and some single family. I sat down to pay my bills one day and realized that there wasn't enough money in the account to cover the outgo. And I thought to myself, Ron, it ain't supposed to be like this. You see, I had amassed over $1 million worth of equity in 2 years. But I couldn't pay my bills. How many of you can relate to that? A bunch of you. A bunch of you landlords especially. I was out on a crusade to generate wealth, but I missed one very important thing that I want to make crystal clear to you folks here today, and that is this. Do not worry about getting wealthy until you take care of today's cash flow needs. You have to provide for a week from Friday before you worry about what's going to happen 10, 15 years from now. You have to make sure that you got more money coming in on a regular, consistent basis than you need to live on before you start worrying about accumulating wealth. Because if you don't, there's a very good chance that the wealth that you're trying to accumulate is going to come crashing around your neck. Take care of today's cash flow needs, then start worrying about getting rich. Now, how do you think I know this? Everything that I'm going to be talking about is things that I've experienced. I've taken some very, very serious seminars in the School of Hard Knocks, and my objective is to keep you from taking as many of those seminars as possible by learning from someone who has walked before you. I have never met anyone who has bought and sold more houses than I have, that teaches it. That gives me two very important credentials today. Number one, I've done it and still do it right up to this very moment. And number two, I've become the country's best at teaching it. With those two combinations, that puts me in a position to where I'm extremely qualified to talk to you about what we're going to discuss, and it puts you in a position to where you have a rare opportunity to experience someone who has done it as much as I have and who has spent so much time putting together teaching methods that can be passed on to you that you can understand. I still do this business to this very day. And just so you'll know that I'm not out here teaching something that I don't do anymore. Monday, I bought and sold a little house simultaneously. I bought it and sold it at the same time at the closing table. In fact, I bought it, I put a loan on it, a private loan on it, which I collected a brokerage on, because I'm also a mortgage broker that deals in private loans. And then I sold it all at the same closing table and picked up a check for $8,000 for that process. And the good part about it was I've never seen the house. I never will. I'll never lay a hand on it. And I wasn't even at the closing. This is a business that you can physically put on automatic pilot, and I will show you how to do just exactly that. Tuesday, I have a closing scheduled where I'm going to sell a house for $80,000 that we spent $33,000 to buy and spent about $15,000 to repair it. That's a retail deal. That's a deal where the end consumer is going to qualify and close the loan. This week, I have lease optioned out 2 houses, and I have owner financed 1, which will close next week. I buy and sell houses on a regular, consistent basis from my desk. I don't go out in the field. I trained others to do that for me, and I still work the business on a part-time basis, buy and sell more houses than most people do actually working at it. Over the years has taught me the easy way to do things, the things that have the path of the least resistance, and it's taught me to do the things that are the most profitable. So I've learned to make the best use of my time, to create the most income I can from the time that I have, and I'm going to try to pass those things on to you. So let's get started right now, and let me explain to you what kind of income opportunities there are in this business. There are 4 major ways to profit in quick-turn real estate. 4 major ways. These are the ways that I make money. These are the ways that my students make money. And these are the best ways that there are. Now, there are spin-offs from these, but this is the basic plan here. Number 1, there is wholesaling. Wholesaling is nothing more than the art of finding bargains and passing them on to bargain hunters. It's the business of locating properties that are usually in need of repairs, putting them under contract at a low price, low enough that you can pass them on to other investors who are looking to repair them and retail them to the end consumer via getting them a new loan at the bank, qualified, and all of that. I still do that to this very day. In fact, as the one I just told you, we did one Monday like that. I have one under contract that I'm going to probably net $6,000 from like that. I'll never touch it. In fact, it's going to close next week. And I have, this is the end, actually this is the, this is the 20th of May, the 20th of May. This month I have done approximately 4 houses in the wholesaling mode, netting me approximately $20,000 to $22,000 from my desk. I'm going to show you how to do that step by step. Business of retailing is the most complicated part of our business, but some say it is one of the most profitable. I would not disagree with that. Retailing is nothing more than buying the houses, usually the same houses that you would wholesale. In retailing, however, your objective is to buy them, usually fix them, and retail them to the consumer, usually going out and getting them new financing. Now, the upside to retailing is that it is very profitable. I have students that, in fact, I won't allow my students to net any less than $10,000 on a retail house, and I work hard on them to net considerably more than that, even in the cheap areas. I have students who net $40,000, $50,000 on a house that they're going to retail. As far as I'm concerned, you should not net any less than 20% of the after repaired value or the sales price. If you're netting less than 20%, then you need to take a look at what you're doing and correct it. Retailing is a very lucrative business. I know people who retail 40 to 50 houses a year with a $15,000 to $20,000 net profit on each house. In fact, is there people in the room here who specialize in retailing houses? Yes, Kevin? How many houses a year do you retail, Kevin, right now? First year in the business.
Well, it's been a little over a year that we've been. In about 1 year, we've done 16 properties retail.
Retail? And what are they worth to you per house?
Started out pretty low. Our first profit was $6,500, and it's gone up every one since then.
What is the average now?
Somewhere between 15 and 25.
Okay, and you'll do, what do you think you'll do next year? In number of houses?
This year?
This year?
Actually, 15.
15 houses?
Yeah.
With a net profit of what?
15 to 25,000.
Okay. 15 to 25,000 per house times 15. Let's see, 15 times 20. What's that? About 30,000, isn't it, Kevin? Something like that. There's a lot of money in retailing, folks. The downside is that it is one of the hardest parts of this business. Finding a house is not hard. Repairing a house is not hard, but finding and attracting and qualifying some buyers puts a lot of people out of the retailing business. That's the hard part. And that's the weak link in the chain. If you master that system, retailing becomes a very profitable portion of our business. It is also one of the ones with the most grief. So if you can override the grief, you can get to the profit quickly. Most people that are in the wholesaling business, usually do some retailing. Some people that are in the retailing business don't even know about wholesaling and have never done it. There are people in this room who retail houses but have never wholesaled one. I'm going to suggest a mix of the two. The next part of our business is the owner financing part. It's the part of the business that I call creating no qualifying financing, dealing with sellers, dealing with FSBOs for sale by owners. The objective in this side of the business is to create financing that we can pass on to the end consumer who will live in the house without banks. In this part of the business, we eliminate banks from our life forever. We don't need anybody's qualification to get our buyers a loan because we are going to finance them or allow them to take over existing financing. In this part of the business, our objective is simply to go for the financing, not the price. The next part of the business is lease options and options. In this part of the business, our objective is to control property long enough to pass it on to the end consumer, either by leasing it to them with the right to sublease, or the right to buy, leasing it to them with the right to buy, or by optioning it from our seller and simply selling it for cash to our buyer. In the lease option business, we'll take control of the property via a lease with the option to buy. We'll put a tenant/buyer in the house and give them the right to rent until they buy. It is a very lucrative business. There's a huge market for this, not only to find the properties, but also to get rid of the properties. The market is tremendous, as you will learn in the lease option module. This is a business that everyone should consider because it is the business of the 90s. Now let me explain the difference between these four components that we're going to talk about so that we clearly understand why you, as a serious real estate entrepreneur, should know all of them. Number one, in the wholesaling and the retailing side of our business, our focus is simply and strictly on buying them cheap. We have to get them at a good price. If we don't get them a good price, we cannot wholesale them, and we certainly cannot retail them, leaving the profit spread in them that we need to make this work for us. Our focus is finding the ones that we can literally steal. And I hope that term doesn't offend anyone. You know, I had a student in a class not too long ago say, "Ron, I'm offended by that word, steal." Well, it's just a term, but let me explain something to you. I haven't stolen one yet. Not one single time did I put a Magnum 44 to somebody's head and say, "If you don't sign, I'll pull the trigger." Every single time, they signed the purchase and sale agreement because they were willing to accept what I offered. I didn't steal anything. I bought them cheap, but with their permission, because I supplied them what they wanted, cash. In the wholesaling and the retailing side of the business, ladies and gentlemen, you're usually going to be dealing with junkers. The objective is to find properties that you can buy cheap, and usually those are properties that need repairs. In the wholesaling and the retailing side of the business, if you'll do it my way, you're also going to be dealing with realtors, because they are the number one supply of properties to purchase in this side of the business. And we're going to cover that in the wholesaling module. Realtors, I buy about 95% of my wholesale properties that I wholesale and retail through realtors who have them listed in the MLS service. And we will cover that in the wholesaling module. In the wholesaling and the retailing side of the business, we're looking for properties that are on the low end of the totem pole. Our focus is on properties that are cheap. They're the lowest priced properties in your city that are not in the war zone. They're properties that are located in areas where people who can qualify for a loan want to live, but they're not in the middle range and they're not in the upper range. Now, you can do business in the middle of the upper range, but not as a beginner. You need to focus on the lower priced properties in this side of the business. Again, the objective is to buy them cheap or control them cheap so that you can wholesale them for a few dollars more than you control them for, or you can retail them for many more dollars after fixing them usually. But let's look at the other side and see how it compares now. In the business of structuring owner financing and lease options, it is the absolute direct opposite of what we just discussed. In this portion of the business, the last thing in the world I want is a cheap house. In fact, you will learn why the higher priced houses you deal with in this side of the business, the more money you will make and the less grief you'll have. In this side of the business, the last thing that I want is a house that needs repairs. I do not do repairs when I'm dealing with owner financing and or lease options. And in this side of the business, I'm not trying to steal the house. I'm simply trying to create some good terms that I can pass on to the consumer. And as you will see when we get into the owner financing module, that does not necessarily mean that the seller has to take back a mortgage or a deed of trust. In this side of the business, I do not use realtors to find the properties. The reason that I don't use realtors is because I have to get into these properties light. When I'm constructing financing or when I'm lease optioning, I have to get into the property with as very few dollars as possible, because one of my profit centers is the difference between what I get from my buyer as a down payment and what I have to give the seller, or what I get from my buyer as a deposit on my lease option agreement. I have to get in light or it destroys my front-end profit on the transaction. In order for me to get in light, I cannot be forced to bring enough money to closing to cover the real estate commission of 6 or 7%. I'm always into the property considerably less than that, so that's why I don't use realtors. In fact, you'll see that you don't need to use realtors in this side of the business. When you learn to crank up your buying machine, you'll have more deals come at you from individuals, from owner-occupants, from FSBOs than you'll ever be able to process, and you don't have to use realtors for this side of the business. So the differences are very distinct and clear. In fact, these two businesses are totally opposite of each other, but here's the catch. When you're out here cranking up your buying machine, when you're getting sellers to call you, when you're looking for deals, unfortunately you can't put everything that comes at you into one mold. If you do, you lose such a tremendous portion of your income. When you run an ad in a paper, you send out postcards, or you do whatever you're going to do to get people to call you, you're going to get all kinds of situations thrown at you with all kinds of underlying financing and all kinds of sellers' needs, and you need to be in a position to where you can determine what model best suits this particular case, slide it into that model, and work a solution or solutions around that model to present to the seller so that you have a much better chance at profiting from the deal. You may profit because you bought it cheap, you may profit because you created some good financing that you can pass on to the consumer, or you may profit because you couldn't take title to it, but you were able to lease option it or option it and then put an ultimate consumer in the process. If you're not aware of all of the solutions that are available to you, a large percentage of your income will go to waste simply because of a little bit of a lack of knowledge. Many people operate in this business with the sole purpose of finding junkers that they can buy cheap. Folks, I'm here to tell you, that's no more than 25% of the business at best. At best. If all you're doing is looking for junkers, you're wasting 75% of your income. Because the biggest income is in creating owner financing and doing lease options. Now we're going to discuss each one of these modules in detail, and we're going to go through the entire business on all three of the modules that we have. Module 1 will be wholesaling and retailing cash flow system. Module 2 will be owner financing or constructing no qualifying financing. And Module 3 will be on lease options and options.